Hey guys, welcome to the Wild Bit Show. I'm Meghna,
And I'm Upamanyu.
and we've got a great show planned for you. So, we're going to be talking about how economic growth is still heating the planet. So, how the planet is heating up, but the economies are also heating up. And along with this, we're also going to be talking about how Nepal is sitting on unsold timber. The community forests have been sitting on timber that has been cut but hasn't been sold. What else do we have on the roast troops?
There's a story from Bolivia where indigenous communities and local governments are helping protect nearly 1 million hectares of forests. That's a very, very positive story, as you can tell from the headline. We'll dive more into that. And then also, there is an oil spill in South Africa, which is sort of washing up on South African beaches. We'll also be talking about that. Along with that, as usual, we will have some smaller updates, some species discovery news, um, and so on. So, yeah, keep watching. Back.
So our headline topic, it's an article from Guardian. It says economic growth is still heating the planet. Is there any way out? Despite decades of climate negotiations, global economic growth remains intrinsically linked to rising greenhouse gas emissions. Linked to rising greenhouse gas emissions, the long held belief that developing nations require emissions leeway to achieve prosperity continues to fuel this connection, evidenced by record GDP and carbon emissions in 2024. However, growing concerns about missed climate targets and potential tipping points are challenging the conventional growth at all costs approach. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres recently urged a shift beyond GDP as a measure of progress, echoing the post growth economic school. This movement proposes alternative frameworks like donor economies and well being budgets that prioritize environmental sustainability and overall well being over constant expansion. The core question now is whether solving the climate crisis necessitates redefining our understanding of progress and prosperity. And our discussion question for this is: can economies thrive without constant growth? And what would that look like? Um, so there's this really amazing graph that the article has, and I'm just going to share it on the screen. Just give me a second. Um, so this is the article from Guardian, and if I scroll down, there's this graph, and you have to keep scrolling down, so it will keep increasing. And this is the global GDP and the emissions. So you can see that the GDP constantly increases. So when there was the 1980s global recession, there was a small dip, but then again it increases. So there was one Asian financial crisis again. So the GDP kind of circled there, but the CO2 emissions in this case were constant and it went up. And then we can see that around from the 2008, the financial crisis again, it just keeps increasing and increasing, steadily increasing. And as of 2024, GDP are at a record high. But this has come at a cost because the global CO2 emissions are also at a record high.
This graph is really insightful as well. And I like how it marks all the global events on the graph as well. Um, if like does this graph make a correlation with this GDP and um environmental like carbon emissions or
Yeah. It does. See on the x-axis and the y-axis, there's global CO2
Mhm.
emissions and global GDP per capita. So the GDP is increasing, but it comes at the cost of annual carbon commission. So the carbon sorry emissions. The carbon emissions are
Mm.
constantly increasing along with that. So in 60, it was below the it was below 20, and by 2024 it was above 40.
Right.
40
Um,
gigatons. So these are gigatons that it's talking about. So it's 20 gigatons, 30 gigatons, and 40 gigatons. So right now we are at 40 gigatons. And we're still at like a progressive, like our graph is still increasing. It's not like coming down. It's not one of those graphs where, there's a constant increase and then there's a dip. That dip has still not come. There are small dips when recessions hit, when financial crises have hit, and when COVID hit. So that was a dip because when recession hits, I think overall growth hits. So that economic growth at that time slowed down. So it kind of came down. The global emissions came down, especially during COVID. If we see, there was like a big drop. That is because people were not flying. There were no flights. There were no, everyone was just confined to their home. It actually caused a big drop in global emissions. But there are
mm,
only certain events that it's happening in. It's not happening all the time.
right. And I like this. This I think is a very insightful article overall, because I like how many graphs this article has, how many graphs and charts this article has. Um, Down below there is a graph where it poses that question, the question we are discussing today as well: can economies still grow without emitting? Um, and it shows a few countries that have decoupled um, growth from emissions, where growth is on an increase. So United States, Japan, Germany, United Kingdom, and France. So growth is increasing, but the emissions is sort of decreasing. But obviously, the developing nations and some of the developed nations as well that haven't yet done that are India, China, Indonesia, Pakistan, Brazil, Bangladesh, Russia, um, for some reason, Ethiopia, Philippines, and Egypt. Now, India and China definitely being one of the two most populous countries. Um, it is very expected that India and China would have that, and both being developing nations, both would have that trajectory. I feel like it presents a very skewed picture here. And I would say why? Because these developed nations, they are thriving on, like, here it says they have decoupled growth from emissions, but that is only being done by sort of transferring some of those their emissions, or transferring some of their junk, as we discussed last episode, transferring some of those junk to these developing nations, who bear the brunt of maybe burning their waste, or you know doing all the harmful chemically intensive um, processes. So this, I think, is a very very favorable article in some respects for the developed nations, so-called developed nations as well. I feel like,
I
because
think I think the question here is that there has been a growth, and the growth is so high right now that it's not just the developing nations. Everyone has to bear the brunt equally, kind of thing. Like they're saying that we're giving leeway to the developing nations, but can we give the leeway to any kind of nations, developed or developing? Because at this point of time, global carbon emissions are at an all-time high. So can we prioritize economic development at all in any country? And this is like a graph that's on my screen. It's basically talks about where we are at the point and where we would be going in the future. So it shows how natural resources are going to decline dangerously low, and food is going to decline than where it is right now. But with that, there is a growth in pollution at the moment, and pollution might decline, and population is also at an all-time high, and it might decline slowly. But the way the population graph would go down, the food and the natural resources graph are going down way faster than the population graph. So that would be like really difficult for economies going forward. So by 2100, there would be more people to feed, but lesser resources at hand.
Um, hmm. This is a really, I guess, requires more of an expert, you know, compared to us because we won't have all the answers. But I feel like the question that you posed that, you know, can we decouple this economic growth and pollution? And I think the answer to that is no, because no country has ever done it. And only since like this presents also a skewed image because a lot of the developing nations, all the industrial revolution happened at a time when we were not counting these numbers. And that also skews all of these graphs. So to say to a country that, you know, you are not entitled to development because now we are facing this challenge, but we are already developed, so we will dictate what you do, is, I think, no country will take that lying down. So there comes the whole political side of this. Like, if you say to my country that, you know, you can't develop until you get these emissions down, then yeah, no, sorry, we are not taking that. But at the same time, so my dilemma here is I don't think there is a way out of this, saying that you have to decouple emissions from your development or growth. It is
the
very,
point
very
here is
difficult.
the point here is not developing versus developed nations. So it's that everything is one planet. We're living on one planet, and everything has been breached in the last few years. So if I share my screen back again, if you see this one thing, it says the scientists warn 7 out of 9 planetary boundaries have now been reached. So atmospheric CO2 levels are at a 15 million year high. Ecological diversity is in major decline. Land area covered by forests has fallen below safe levels. Fresh water is unstable. Global nutrient cycles are disrupted. Everything basically is down except ozone is safe. That's because we took that recovery steps, and aerosols are still in the safe zone. But when we go down, they still talk about how, living standards and environmental damage. There is that thing. So growth and decoupling is different because countries have like gone at that stage where growth and decoupling, but still the environmental damage by developed nations is way higher, and this it shows here. So, like Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and India, Pakistan, all of them have lower living standards, so they have lower environmental harm. But here, the higher living standards have higher environmental harm. So, all the countries that you said are already placed here. So that is there. So even if they have decoupled, the growth has been decoupled, but the environmental harm has not been. At this point of time, there is basically it's saying that developing countries um, haven't decoupled, but these countries cause these environmental damages because their cost of living or their way of living is higher. So both things are going hand in hand. So it's not like they're only blaming the developing nations. The point here is that we have to see what we can cut down and if it is even possible, because it's one literally one planet that we have. And if we're going to give that up by fighting over developing versus developed, then we wouldn't have a planet to live on anymore.
Yeah, I yes, I agree with you, and I think that that other graph, this graph, the trade-off between living standards and environmental damage, that graph shows paints a very, you know, I guess, a fuller picture. Um, my my dilemma always in these kinds of scenarios where it heavily involves humans and politics and all the other things that that we thrive for, or that sort of humans fight over, or humans define humans. Whenever it comes to these kinds of topics, I am very skeptical that is there a real scenario, because nobody will be willing to compromise.
So
Um,
that is absolutely true. Like, I mean, the maximum that countries would do is go for like COP30 summits, or, like pledge a few things. But I
mm,
think the problem here is, oops, that as a species, as as human beings, we don't realize that the planet that we are living on would not sustain, or would not be able to sustain us for much longer if we keep doing this. That is my problem at the moment. So even, even when we have when I talk to my friends and everything, and they're planning for like having babies and all, so I'm like, what kind of world are you trying to bring your babies in? Like, literally, there's nothing good happening, and it's going to keep getting worse. Like, we keep saying that we have to save it for the future generations. The future generations are already choking. Like, there is nothing right now on earth that they can also give to their future generations at this point of time. we I'm just talking about having this planet, and like saving this planet.
yes, I think I brought this up a couple of episodes ago as well. Um, I think this urgency, or this feeling that we have to save our planet, or like this is a duty to save our planet, I think it's absent in 99% of people. Like, people are so busy with their day to days that, like, and also people might be like, their lives are already miserable. Every life is miserable. Life is suffering. Um, with all the social media and everything else, it has become even more miserable. People are like, we'll die, let's die. Until then, let's do all the things that especially damages the planet, and let's go to all these you know yeah, all these parties or festivals or anything like that causes huge carbon footprints, and let's just enjoy life until the day we die.
That is true. I mean, obviously, you're going to live for your present, and especially with poor people in developing countries, they are just looking to survive. So, they're not going to be thinking about the environment and any kind of damage, and
Mhm.
their damage, or their contribution to damage is minimal. But and everyone will obviously prioritize their well-being over the planet's. But at the same time, if you're thinking of like having a future generation that is going to live on this planet, all these people who want to get married, have kids, this is the kind of planet we're going to leave. So that 99% have to think about what kind of planet you're going to leave for the generations ahead.
Yeah, I think this is, as I as and this podcast has been really good for my thinking as well, as we together go through so many different kinds of stories and so many different news articles concerning new health, environment, wildlife, climate change, etc. My thinking is going in that direction, that maybe no one cares. Like, if somebody cared about these kinds of stuff, then we wouldn't have, news like what we are going to discuss, oil spills in South African beaches, or the US, giving out licenses for more fracking and more oil mining and things like that. um Maybe nobody cares. Is that the reality of things? I'm very scared of that reality, but maybe that is the reality.
I think in some ways, um like, if you look back also and see, let's say our grandparents, they didn't have to think about the planet or the damage or anything else. When it came to our parents, probably a little bit, but when it comes to us, there's a lot of burden on us. Like, let's say, even if it's women's rights or any other thing, or the environment, the climate, everything falls upon us. So we have to face the burden because the planet is going haywire and the planet is heating up. But imagine 2 generations down, oops, like what kind of pressure would they have? Like they would literally be battling through lesser food resources and lesser everything, and the population would still be at a decent growth because it would have not started falling. Like their burden would be far higher than our burden, but we still don't realize that.
Hmm. Hmm. Our Earth has gone through three mass extinctions. Maybe this is the fourth, and
I
it's
thought it
caused
was
by us.
I thought it was already five. Wasn't the dinosaur the fifth?
I don't know the exact count. Maybe if you're saying so.
No, no,
Um.
I'm just asking. Let's see. Were dinosaurs the fifth extinction? Yeah, dinosaurs were the fifth one.
Hmm.
So there
So
were,
maybe
yeah, we would be the sixth.
we'll be the sixth. So I mean, nothing new in the planet's history,
But it would be nice to be wiped out by a meteor by than by being wiped out by ourselves, wouldn't it?
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we keep hearing these news of um what was that movie 2012 that
Hmm.
you remember when we were growing up, and then there was like
Hmm.
2012, the world is going to end 2012. We'd all kind of braced ourselves that yeah, 2012 is the ending year. Was it because of the Mayan philosophy or the Mayan something?
Yeah.
But we're still here in 2026, but we actually like to believe that, oh yes, the earth is going to come to an end today.
Yeah. So five mass extinctions, and we are in the midst of a sixth mass extinction. Um. And probably this is the nature's plan to wipe us out. I guess that's the only way to keep ourselves sane in this dire times. But what I think, whatever we can do, whatever little we can do to not contribute to the global heating, and also there are so many issues around us that we often like have to pick and choose that which issue do we want to fight for, or which issue do we want to lend our voice to. We obviously, being avid nature lovers and climate change, strong believers in the phenomena of climate change and wanting to do something about it, we obviously are choosing these kinds of issues to focus on mainly. But people also are, spoiled for choice, for a lack of a better term. There are so many issues out there. But I think for our podcast, for the kind of audience we are listened by, I think the only thing we could do, and this is from personal, this is a personal recommendation, this is what I try to do, is reduce the impact that you yourself are having on um, the planet, um, to a percent, a X percent, whatever percent that may be.
Yeah, I think I mean obviously individual contributions add up. It really adds up. And if you really care about the planet, if you care about having kids, then you definitely need to, do something. I mean, you need to save the planet for them. It's not just having kids and making sure they grow up. You have to make sure that they grow up in a kind of like a planet that is worth surviving in. And at this point of time, I don't think the planet is heading there. It's heading downwards. And for oops and me, we can both say that, oh, let's say we live for another 25, 30 years. That's it, like we're done. So it's pretty much like how Attenborough in his 90s was like, oh, this is my last testament, I'm going to die, you all will also die, the earth is heating, and that's about it. Like, it's literally going to be that. But we have to think about where the earth is heading. We have our own responsibility.
I think climate change for most people, as I say, is a really big topic, really big thing, really, out there thing to grasp. I would more likely, and for me as well, it is for me as well. Sometimes my brain sort of explodes. What are the different things that can be done? And saving wild animals and wild species, they are so far removed from us, in terms of where we live, and sort of in the urban spaces, etc., that it's very difficult for us to directly contribute. So I think being mindful of your choices day to day, even if you can be mindful of, you know 5 choices that you make in a month, that's like me making those choices mindfully, I think, is the only thing I can expect, at least, because more than that, I myself am not able to do. um
True. And individual contributions aside, obviously countries need to start thinking. So there's,
mm,
there are the developing countries have to think about decoupling, and the developed countries have to think about how to lower their standards of living, in the sense that there have to be alternatives so that their carbon emissions are not so high, or, and
right,
their environmental damage is not so high. So
right.
there has to be a balance for both the countries, both types of countries. And there has to be some way for us, because if we are going to survive on this planet for longer, the only way is to save this planet. And looking at how the plans are going for Mars, with bombing Mars's poles so that it releases more gases and trapping them and getting hotter, I don't think we'll have another planet left either. Like, with all this experimentation, I don't know where it would head to. So honestly, we have only this planet right now, like not even moon. So this planet, so save it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, that countries definitely need to um focus on that. And I think another way individually people can contribute is by choosing leaders, at least in democratic nations, choosing leaders who are focusing on these issues. Even if you don't directly do it, if the government enforces something, then obviously the country largely has to follow. So I think choosing leaders is another way that you can sort of contribute to this global issue. Um, yeah, I think that's about it for this one.
This topic. Yep.
Um, we will sort of keep tracking the climate change is always going to be a theme in our episodes. So we'll keep tracking these kinds of stories. This article, definitely give it a read. This has a lot of different graphs and charts, and plots that is very insightful. We didn't get the time to cover every one of those, but definitely give this article read. Very data driven article. I definitely, the kind of articles that I definitely like. Yeah.
Can we add it in our pinned comment, so that people can
Yes.
probably access? Yeah, we can do that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that. We can do that. Anyway, moving on to the next one, more of a positive story from the African country, Bolivia, so the Latin American country, Bolivia. So, Bolivia, so I think we have tracked a different number of stories from South America where indigenous communities are stepping up, which is a great thing to hear. In this case, too, this is a report from Mongabe. It says Bolivia indigenous communities, local governments help protect nearly 1 million hectares. So, this is again proof that a community, a small community, a grassroots community, individual people can m- you know impact the political fabric and make change in a way that impact millions. So they have protected nearly 1 million hectares. That's a very big feat. So this goes on to read: Bolivia has established four new protected areas spanning 907,244 hectares, 907,244 hectares of Amazon rainforest and Andean highlands, aiming to bolster wildlife corridors and support local economies. This initiative, spearheaded by local officials and indigenous communities, addresses a slowdown in national park creation, relying on departmental and local government efforts. The areas connect indigenous territories with national parks, enhancing ecological connectivity. Conservation International Bolivia highlights municipalities protecting over half their land, demonstrating durable, community focused conservation. Backed by organizations like the Andes Amazon Fund and the EU, this move counters Bolivia's high deforestation rates: 1.8 million hectares lost in 2023, driven by agriculture and fires. I have a question here. It says they protected 907,244 hectares of Amazon rainforest. Isn't the whole Amazon rainforest protected? It is not a national park?
No, so I think part of it is like, so there's a lot of protected areas, but there are a lot of unprotected areas as well. So they're trying to, I think, in some parts they're trying to what do you say, deregularize. You remember last time we did a story from Brazil, I think,
Mm,
where they were trying to, like, cut down and deforest more because they had stricter environmental penalties or whatever, and
mm,
the taxes were growing. But in Bolivia's case here, they want to save or protect. So I don't think, there's probably like a core area and there are buffer areas, and so they're trying to bring in more into the core area, and in certain countries they're trying to, like, cut into the core area as well. So that is what is happening.
mm. Uh, from from this, what it feels like is the Amazon rainforest is free for all, and only in countries where national parks are built to protect parts of the Amazon rainforest, that is where the actual protections and enforcements apply. I feel like if that is the case, then I feel like, again, might be easier said than done, but I feel like the entire Amazon rainforest, we call it the lungs of our earth. It is really the lungs of our earth. I think the entire Amazon rainforest, whatever country shares the Amazon rainforest, should come together and protect the entire thing. Make it the Amazon National Park or something like that.
I think with the Amazon rainforest, obviously, hopes like the core areas, because like the buffer areas still surround it. The core areas will remain protected till the buffer is not, like, cut into, because it's not easy to reach into the core areas. There are far too many, like, probably wildlife species that people are scared of. There might be, like, different indigenous communities that are staying in the heart, but mostly people don't want to get into, like, thicker jungles. But with the buffer areas, if that is protected, it would automatically protect the core areas. So in this case, Bolivia is doing that. Like, that is a massive, massive protected area that it has come up with. Nine lakh seven thousand
Yes.
two hundred and forty-four. Yeah, that
Yeah.
is just impressive that it could, like, establish those, that much of protected areas, and just through the support of local indigenous communities.
Yeah. So I this is a report, or not report, but this is a piece of article from wwfspanda.org. It says, so Amazon covers an area of 6.7 million kilometers square. The Amazon biome is complex and fascinating, contains 10% of the planet's known biodiversity and 15% of world's fresh water. Discharges 15% of the world's fresh water. Um, there are over 3,000 indigenous territories, have been identified within the Amazon biome. These areas represent 635% of the Amazon region. When protected areas are added to this percentage, 49.4% of the biome is under some type of management and protection. This is the facts from WWF. And I don't think 49%, like not even 50%. I guess in a way that is a win. 49%, at least 49% is under management and protection, some type of management and protection, especially the ones protected by the indigenous communities and indigenous territories. We can expect a lot from those indigenous communities and territories, but that also means that 51.6% of the biome, um, sorry, 50.6% of the biome is not protected. What are we doing about that? Um,
Yeah, but I think the thing is, oops, um, like we have been seeing a lot of positive stories from South America, um, and this is like the second story. I think last week also we saw.
yeah.
So there's been a lot of anti-deforestation drives in a lot of countries. I think if I remember, it was Colombia last time, and
Mm,
it's Bolivia this time. So they're trying to combat the anti-deforestation. What would you say, the anti-deforestation image that they have. So even in this news, like they said that it's trying to counter Bolivia's deforestation drive, which was in 2003, I think, one of their biggest deforestation drive, driven by agricultural fire. So they're trying to like bring back the Amazon. So these countries are still trying, but there are other countries that are not even trying. Like let's say the US, they have these amazing national parks, but they've kind of cut down on the protection of these national parks. So it can't fall on the Amazon or countries that surround the Amazon. It has to be
mm.
all countries, just like how we spoke in the previous article. It has to be all countries together.
I think these wild spaces for all countries need to be under the strictest, um, you know, protection and management. Um, the discussion question for this particular um, uh, report and topic is, can local community led conservation efforts be more effective and durable than national level protections? And at least in the case of South America, it seems like the answer is yes, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, definitely. I think indigenous communities in a lot of places can actually band up. In certain
Mm,
places, like here, the local officials are helping them, but in a lot of places, it doesn't happen that way. So, Indonesia being an example, like we see a lot of stories coming from Indonesia and Vietnam and all Southeast Asian countries where the official help is not there. So, the indigenous people are stranded between trying to protect their place, but nobody is helping them out with protecting their space. So, in at least in the Amazon, it's heartwarming to know that there is some amount of protection, and there's growth of that protection. So hopefully, like there'll be more positive stories like this from other places as well, because this is what we need to do. We need to start protecting instead of starting to rip, everything down.
yeah, it is absolutely right. You know, great job on the indigenous communities that have banded together, and the local governments, um, which I imagine is also, comprised of people from these indigenous bodies, and you know, but still, it is a big job that they have managed to protect this 1 million hectares. That is a really big feat. And I think South America, as we said, has a really good trend going, and hopefully they will continue to do that. So, so 907,000 hectares, or 9 lakh hectares, 9 lakh 7,000 hectares is around 9,000 square kilometers. So just wanted to put that into perspective. Amazon biome is 6.9 million square kilometers. Um, and this protection is granting 9,000 square kilometers under the protective body of um, you know these indigenous communities and the local government. So keep that in mind also. It's 9,000 versus 6.9 million kilometers. I think sometimes articles will use the one measurement over the other to make the numbers seem large. But still, it is a great job in terms of the community effort, in terms of the local government effort, and going against sort of the state mandate or the federal mandate, I guess.
Yeah.
Mm.
Um, so this is actually, we're hoping for more positive stories, I guess, like this
Mm.
to come across, because this is just one of the many stories, and we actually like to see such positive stories, because there's a lot of negative stories. Like, you've seen our first story. We have to kind of wade through the sea of sad stories about the environment to come up with like at least one or two positive stories. Because I think as podcasters and someone who loves the environment, it does get really really demotivating to
Mm. True.
to not see positive stories. So we try to accommodate and try to include at least a few every episode.
Right. And this is one of them. Cool. Um, what do you want to cover next, Meghna?
We're going to go back to covering sad stories.
Mm.
So we're going to go to how Nepal is, Nepal's community forests are sitting on unsold timber. Nepal's community forests are facing a timber surplus, with significant volumes remaining unsold nationwide. Despite successful reforestation efforts, increasing forest cover up to 44%, high government taxes, collection costs, and competition from cheaper private and imported wood hinder sales. Districts like Dolaka, Bara, and Nawalpur report substantial unsold timber, totaling an estimated 60,000 cubic meters in Lumbini province alone. This
Mm.
unsold stock prevents local user groups from generating revenue needed for sustainable forest management and conservation. Officials acknowledge the issue, citing high tax rates as a primary barrier. The situation also fuels debate, with some blaming strict conservation laws for impending infrastructure development. This creates a challenge for balancing economic needs with environmental sustainability. Um, so this I honestly don't know. For me, one of the things obviously here is that the taxing is good, because that means that you're not going to like just deforest at any rate.
Right.
But secondly, I don't understand why they're deforesting if there's no demand. Like, I mean, I would assume that you just don't cut down timber till there's some kind of order, there's some kind of recurring demand for it. So why are you cutting down trees and then sitting on it and then complaining about the high taxes?
I think there they mention sustainable forest management. So in managed forests, I think to keep the space or make the space for new timber to grow, because these are managed forestry and not natural tree, or sort of uh, like not natural trees, but like these are not trees that are being cut from the forests. These are specially planted for timber production. I think for they have to keep cutting down the crop for the new trees being able to grow. It's the same thing as like a harvest. Even if there is no demand, you have to harvest the crop, otherwise you can't plant the next crop. It is the same, I think, with managed forests. that's that could be one of the potential reasons why they would need to chop down the timber, even though there is no demand, and sort of hope for that the demand is generated.
But does that mean that you have to keep cutting down the timber? If that is
Correct.
like a prerequisite, or if it is something that is a non-negotiable, then there has to
Mm,
be maybe a stop on importing wood or another kind of things.
true.
And like, when you're taxing and you're making sure that deforestation is not at an alarming rate, and then you
Mm,
want that money to go into forest management and conservation of the forest, then it only makes sense that you also stop access routes to other wood sources that are cheaper.
True. I think this. I, I don't know what to feel about this story because I'm not sure. Does this say that this is causing? What is the outcome of this? Like, or what? How is it damaging to the environment? I'm just trying to understand that. Um.
I think I think what's happening here is that there is a success story, okay, and the community-based forestry was the success story where the forest covering has increased. So the locals support the forest management because it's like a win-win. They're saving the forest and they get to like cut down some part of timber that they can sell, but because they have to kind of tax it heavily so that the locals don't go haywire with cutting down timber again.
Right.
They have taxed it, but at the same time they've not stopped the access to private and imported timber, so that is cheaper, like wherever maybe from
Right.
other countries that don't have the same kind of taxation laws, or that don't care about their trees as much, so they're just cutting down the wood for cheaper, selling them for cheaper. So I mean, if I'm a business and I'm getting cheaper wood and expensive wood, I would take the cheaper one. So
Definitely.
that is where Nepal's problems are starting. So the people who want to save the forest, then the government is not supporting them. And even
Mm.
so, the thing is that if the government had to support them, they don't have to lower the taxes, but they have to make sure that that people buy only from them, like that it's more local than imported.
Right. Right. I think that's the correct play then, to you know to make sure that the taxes are at the correct rate, and the timber from the community forestry, or the locally produced timber is being prioritized rather than import. It's just like what India went through during the freedom movements, that why buy foreign imported goods when we can produce the same goods in India. That was one of the key messages during the Indian freedom movements, and post freedom as well, because a lot of stuff was being imported from from England, since they had put us in that dependency over imported products. So I think this is a similar story in a much smaller scale, in just the timber industry. But if these forests keep cutting down, then, because this is community forest, which is slightly different than what I mentioned, managed forests. So if this forests keep cutting down, um, it will cause an impact to um, to the local communities and to the ecosystems that thrive within those forests as well. So um, I think Nepal has this opportunity to balance the import, the private, you know, timber logging, and sort of the community forests, for the local communities as well.
Yeah, I think with the community forest model, the government is handing over the management to the local community group, saying that okay, you have to take care of this forest. But the incentive for taking care of this forest is that because it's mostly timber, these forests, so
Mm,
they cut down the timber and then they regrow the timber, and so it has to be a win-win situation. But if the government is not
right.
helping those communities sell their timber, then these communities would not want to take care of their forests anymore, and they would not
Mm,
be motivated enough. They might have to find other sources of income or anything, but the forests would go for a toss because right now they're managed and they wouldn't be managed anymore. But also, there's one really interesting paragraph in this article, and I'll just share it 1 second.
mm,
It says, just sharing my screen. Yeah. Um, the screen is in OBS is not at the same level as where I am, but okay. It says the introduction of community forest programs was accompanied by stringent deforestation laws that impose heavy fines or even jail time for violation. These laws are often unpopular with infrastructure developers, as legally clearing forested land requires extensive documentation, compensatory replantation, and um, payment of fees, which can significantly slow down projects, leading to calls for the relaxation. This is portrayed as over conservation.
Mm.
Oh, I think yeah, my
I think your screen is not shared.
yeah,
Yeah, now
I
it's
just
now
realized.
it's shared.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, so this is the paragraph that I was talking about.
Mm,
So now this is portrayed as over conservation just because there are stringent laws for saving the forest. That's the kind of infrastructure development in Nepal. They're trying to push for it. So right now, if they really want to save the forest, the government has to buckle up and be like, no, only timber that's grown in Nepal.
right, right. Yeah. I think that is one of the things that Nepal has to do. Um, Discussion question here is, how can Nepal balance forest conservation with economic viability for community groups and infrastructure needs? I feel Meghna, whatever the solution Meghna gave, or the solution Meghna spoke about, along those lines, I think that is the solution for this situation. Otherwise, as Meghna was saying, the communities will become demotivated if there is no capital gains, or sort of if there's no um, revenue that they're getting from this protecting or living in harmony with these community forests.
Yep. So here's to just hoping that there is like a turnaround, because wood that's already been cut has to be used. I mean, you've already deforested that space, and you want to reforest that space. So
Mm,
it makes only sense that Nepal kind of um, focuses more on their communities that are trying to increase this forest cover.
true, true. That is a good one. Here's to hoping. Um, cool. Should we move on to the next one, Meghna? Let's do that. This is another story from Mongabay, which is titled "Unidentified Oil Washes Up on South African Beaches." A mysterious oil spill is impacting South Africa's 12,000 kilometers, 1,200 kilometers southeast coast, from George to Durban, promoting concern from conservationists and beach closures. Reports began January 22nd of tar balls and filled barrels washing ashore, monitored by citizen networks across 20 beaches. The source remains unknown, with possibilities including illegal offshore dumping or a leaking ship. Organizations like Wildlife and Environment Society of South Africa are investigating, while SM,
Yes.
SM Velo KZN Wildlife conducted an unsuccessful aerial survey for a larger offshore spill. The South African Foundation for the Conservation of Coastal Birds is requesting reports of oiled seabirds, particularly impacting critically endangered African penguin population. Authorities urge public documentation of any findings, as the cause of the dense starballs remains a worrying mystery. Um, Again, if anyone is listening from South Africa, uh, if you listen to the excerpt that we read out, the government is urging citizens to note any findings. So if you're from South Africa and if you live in the region that is mentioned in the article, definitely, do that, help out the government. But this is really surprising that they can't identify the source of this oil and the tar balls that are washing up on South African beaches. That is really strange.
Yep, that's strange, and it's sad because that means that these penguins that are, local to this area, they are being mostly impacted. And they're already critically endangered, and the oiling is causing a problem because like I mean, when the oil is on their skin and everything, they can't get the oil off.
Hmm.
On the feathers, so they can't get their oil off, and that means that that would lead to more decimation of the population.
Right. Um, this is really strange, and I was just trying to find the mysterious tar balls, but there is not a very good image of those of that anywhere on the internet. But I think this is the real concern for the seabirds, as Meghna was saying, and for the health of the coasts. Basically, there are marine ecosystems that involved here as well, and any kind of petroleum products and nature doesn't go very well together. Petroleum, fossil fuels in any form causes major damage to the environment. Fossil fuels were fossilized or were compressed by nature and kept underground for a reason. Let's say, we have been extracting that, and yeah, look
Yeah,
at the havoc that has been causing.
and the problem with oil spills is that like we don't see the impact of the oil spill that happens in the ocean because it's
Mm,
happened like on an open ocean and it keeps spreading, but that oil forms like a film over the water, and a lot of species have problems with the sun that's coming through, or the air,
mm,
the oxygen that they have to breathe through, or the kind of oil that seeps through and like gets onto like birds and everything else. So oil is really tricky that way, like if you don't know. And this is actually even harder because you cannot even anticipate where the oil is coming from. So something must have turned overturned somewhere else, but it's washing up in some other part of the planet.
right. And the discussion question we have is a funny one. What's more concerning, the unknown source or the potential impact on vulnerable wildlife like African penguins? And as conservationists and nature lovers, you might be inclined to say, of course, it's the wildlife. But I think the source, knowing the source is equally important, so that number one, we can prevent this from happening again. And number two, if there needs to be any penalty for intentional damage being caused or intentional spillage, or overloading, excess oil or something like that, something along those lines. If there is any penalties that needs to be levied, then we also need to know the source as well. What do you think, Meghna?
Definitely. I mean, you know, both things are important. You want to protect these African penguins, so there have to be ways to maybe like kind of limit how the oil is washing up wherever they are. Maybe there are different ways of doing that, but we have to also find out the source, because if the source is not found, this oil can keep washing up. So there's no
Mm,
way to stop the source. So if the source is found, at least the root cause can be stopped. Because right now you can do kind of like a protective kind of thing, but you can't do like a permanent kind of thing. So the permanent solution would only be to find the source and to stop that source so that
mm,
it doesn't impact these penguins.
right, right. And I think even with protecting, it would be very difficult to protect the like or to prevent the ocean from washing up along with these oils, because water and oil doesn't mix. So it will be always that the water, whenever the water comes in, the oil will just remain on the beaches, which is again a huge cause of concern for African penguins, especially, and other seabirds and shorebirds as well. I think we did another story from South Africa a couple of um, weeks ago, which mentioned a nuclear power plant being built, and in, and that encroaching on environmental um, areas or environmental stability. I wonder if there is something there, like if those stories can be connected. Very unlikely, but um,
I
there has
mean,
been.
there's just like oil filled barrels as well washing ashore. So unless there was some kind of news that there was some ship that had overturned and there were barrels filled in it. But again, like with the ocean, the thing is it can keep traveling for
Yeah,
like hundreds of kilometers. So there has to be some way to know where it's coming from, and at the place that it's coming from, like what is the impact to the marine life there as well.
right, right. That is one for the investigators and the people in charge of this investigation. I think hopefully the source gets identified, but also, as Meghna said, if there are any makeshift measures that could be taken by the government or the local communities to preserve or conserve the penguins or the shorebirds or the seabirds that are being affected. Definitely the government and the local communities should be doing that as well. um
Yeah,
and yeah, just
and
helping
it's
identify the source, I guess, if anyone has any information. This is more of that. The identification is very, very crucial. As Meghna said, we have to make sure that that the source is stopped and it doesn't happen again if it was a accident or a mistake, and then also some kind of penalty if applicable as well.
true. And I mean that is the need of the hour, because with oil spills, it really suffocates these birds and animals. It coats their wings and their fur and everything, and their feathers and their insulating properties and the other properties that their feathers have, the waxiness, all of that goes away with the
Right,
oil
yeah.
coating. So
Hmm.
it's actually really bad for them, and for the marine life that's under, the oxygen kind of reduces. So it's all in all, it's really bad to have like oil spill in the ocean, and for it to wash up ashore, and like impact all the other marine life and other life on land as well. So we let's hope that the source can be found out really soon. So
Yes.
there's like a better stoppage of the oil impacting these vulnerable penguins.
Right, right. Cool. um
Yeah, let's do a couple of species probably.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. We're being really efficient today. That's good. That's good. So we can cover more stories.
Yeah. So a new dragonfly species is discovered in Kerala, and it's named Lyriothemis keral and keralensis. Okay, keralensis. Um, a new dragonfly species, Lyriothemis keralensis, has been identified in Kerala, India, honoring the state's biodiversity. Researchers from institutions in Bengaluru and Kerala discovered the dragonfly in Ernakulam district, inhabiting shaded plantation, canals, and pools. Visible only during the southwest monsoon, May to August, it spends the rest of the year as an aquatic larva. Males exhibit striking blood red and black coloration, while females are yellow and black, displaying distinct sexual dimorphism. Previously misidentified as Lyothemis achygastra, detailed microscopic analysis confirmed its unique characteristics: a slender abdomen and distinct genitalia. The discovery, published in the International Journal of Odontology. Okay, that must be the one with insects. Highlights
Mm.
Kerala's rich yet often overlooked insect life. Ornitology. Ornitology. Okay. And let's just share the picture of this bird, of this dragonfly. Sorry.
So I think Odonata is the order of the predatory flying insects that includes sort of
Oh,
dragonflies and damselflies. So
nice.
that's why it's called. I mean, it would be a part of entomology, but I think it's a subpart which is called odonatology. Interesting.
Something,
I didn't know that.
yeah,
Something
yeah,
something we learned
new for both of us. Yeah, new for
new
both
for
of
both
us
of
that
us.
there were predatory insects and there was like a whole taxa for them. So
Yes.
this is the dragonfly, and I've shared it on my screen. Beautiful looking
Right.
dragonfly, and a beautiful picture. Like that's a really really nice picture. Whoever's taken it.
Yeah.
But that's the new dragonfly that's been found, and because it was found in Kerala, so it's been named after the state, which is really beautiful. Um,
Mhm.
but yes, that's the male dragonfly.
Yeah. It just reminds us that how many wonders of nature are still waiting to be found. This is a beautiful dragonfly. I didn't expect it to be this beautiful.
Yeah.
But yeah, it looks very, very beautiful. Um cool. Um there's another one from National Geographic that I wanted to cover. This is not a new species particularly, but it is a discovery. It says, "Meet the Baroness, the world's longest wild snake." Ibu Baron, a reticulated python in Indonesia, has been officially verified by Guinness World Records as the world's longest snake ever measured in the wild. Discovered in late 2025, the snake measures an astounding 23 feet and 8 inches long and weighs around 213 pounds, even without having recently eaten. Wow, that is terrifying to say the least. Explorer Radu Frentu, along with wildlife guide Diaz Nughara, meticulously documented the measurement process using photographs and video for transparency. While reticulated pythons commonly reach 10 to 19 feet, Ibu Baron significantly exceeds this, and her length could be even greater if measured while sedated. Wow, okay. Verified measurements are rare due to the snakes becoming status symbols and disappearing before documentation. Oh my god, this last line just killed me. But okay. Let me share the image of this Baroness as it's called. Um wow, look at that. I think Indonesia has a lot of the constrictors and pythons and things like that. Um, wow, this looks this is a scene from a prehistoric jungle, maybe. Um, this slithering around the jungle is terrifying. Wow,
No, that's
easily can
actually,
eat a human.
yeah, but that's really really beautiful, and also the fact that there's just one snake and they have named her, and they call her Ibu Baron, and they measured her, and it's really cute that they say that it might actually significantly, like her length could be even longer if they sedate her. So they've actually taken all the measurements without her being sedated. So maybe like it would have taken 5 6 people to hold and just measure, hold and measure, hold and measure,
Hmm.
and this is what they've come up with. So, I mean, I don't know if the snake realizes that she's in the Guinness World Records, you know?
Definitely not. But yeah, that's a beautiful and terrifying sight. Another image, just comparing the snake to uh, a human. Look at that. Look at that. That is huge. That snake is huge. Wow. Um,
But the snake seems to be really cooperative, though.
looks like if it's well fed, and I think Yeah, but the pattern is like beautiful, reticulated.
Yeah.
Um, lives up to its name. Let's see if there. Oh my God! Look at that! Look at that! Such 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people holding the snake. Such a big one. Cool discovery. Cool discovery.
Yep. Okay, let's move on to the next topic then.
Which one do you want to do?
I think I want to do one topic about the Galapagos.
Yeah.
Um, So it does. It says abandoned tuna fishing devices pollute the Galapagos Marine Reserve. Lost or abandoned fish aggregating devices (FADs) used by the tuna industry are increasingly polluting the Galapagos Marine Reserve in Ecuador, a biodiversity hotspot. These plantados drift into the protected area, harming reefs, entangling wildlife like sharks and turtles, and releasing plastic as they degrade. Ecuador's growing tuna fleet and the widespread adoption of FADs since the 1980s have exacerbated the problem. The device pose threats to both the environmental and local artisanal fishers. Local agencies and organizations are now focused on preventing FAD intrusion and cleaning up existing debris to mitigate the damage to this fragile ecosystem. And for people who did not know, Galapagos is one of those places where it's extremely, extremely like abundant in marine life. Like the Galapagos Marine Reserve is one of those places where people like save up to go. It's like, like the top places that you could dive if you're a diver. So like Galapagos and Raja Ampat are right up there. So it's actually quite disheartening to know that there are abandoned fishing devices that are floating around and they're actually harming the reefs and entangling into wildlife.
What is a fish aggregating device? I have never heard of it. Um, Sounds like a trolling net of some kind. It would be a net of some kind, but I don't know what exactly is a fish aggregating device. But whatever it is causing. It is definitely made of plastic. That is for sure, and
Yeah,
yeah,
I'll show a photo.
harmful.
I'll show a photo to the viewers. So um let me just share my screen. So this is one of the fish aggregating devices. It is a net. It is something that kind of I think catches the tunas. It's specifically made for the tuna fleet, and this is components of one of the fish aggregating device. This is apparently made of biodegradable material, and it's on one of the reefs inside the Galapagos Islands.
Right, right. I just found this image. I'll just quickly share my screen for a moment. Um, this is this is what it sort of would look like. A typical fish aggregating device. There's a surface buoy and then a swivel, an attractant, a sinking line. But what does it do? I still don't understand what it does.
I think what it does is it kind of stays in one place, but
Right,
it kind of attracts the fish to get into this net, and then it aggregates them. So instead of you going and throwing a line and then pulling it back in, like you place this in one place, and all the fish come to that place and get trapped in that net, and then you just collect the net and go.
right, right. So this is like a cousin or a younger brother to trolling, kind of.
Yeah, I think in this case, basically, it's not like rubbing against the ground. But the problem with these kind of aggregating devices is that they're not being taken out properly. So parts of
Mm,
them are just floating around and then they're disintegrating because not all of them are made of biodegradable material. So there's a lot of plastic. And parts of it are still like, the parts of the net or everything that disintegrates, it's going and entangling into different animals. So that is where the problem is. It's actually the disposal or the removal of these fish aggregating devices. It's not the usage as much as the disposal of it.
right. So uh, FAD is defunct, fishermen are basically just leaving them there and not bothering to collect them back and dispose of it properly, which is typical behavior that we do.
So
Nothing new.
yeah, so see, this is one of the FADs near one of the islands in Galapagos. They have like the nets trailing underwater them. So this is the surface buoy or the surface level that you would see. But underwater, there's all net. So that net could untangle other fish as well. And that net
Mm,
and this whole device could just drift apart if it snaps from its anchor line.
yeah, I think there's the image, good image, um, down the article,
There we
which shows the actual device in action as well, and I think a turtle is trapped in it.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll just share that one. Yeah. So
yeah,
this is the device. This is the surface buoys that Oops was showing. So it was this is what is pulling it towards the surface. There's a net, and then this is the long line net, which is attracting the fish to kind of. I think there's a way for it to funnel in, but not come out of that net. So, but you can see the turtle at the top of the net, kind of stuck between the threads and the ropes of this fish aggregating device.
right. It is quite. It is one of those sites, right? Those sad sites. You know how you see turtles with nets around their necks, and turtles seem to be one of the most impacted and affected by any kind of plastic that is floating around in the ocean. Or I think turtles, you know, um, being on that um, threshold between living in sea and living in land, being an amphibian, I think,
Yeah, and
yeah,
and the thing with these devices is basically that there have to be stricter norms about, disposing them off or removing them from the ocean. Because I do not know that once you kind of throw it, if and you collect it or you have a timeline for it, then you have to make sure that you take them out of the ocean as well, and you don't keep using them and you don't keep throwing them off because they're drifting through the ocean. So they would keep drifting. So right now it's Galapagos, they might go to other parts of the ocean and they would keep entangling till they're removed.
right, right. Um, Yeah, turtles are one of the most affected. Other marine life might be as affected too. And I think Galapagos is one of those places where we almost, um, you know, synonymize Galapagos with the cradle of species because that's where Charles Darwin sort of came up with his theory of evolution during a voyage to the Galapagos. And it has some really unique species, and it is one of those islands that has been trapped in time. So, very fragile ecosystem because of that, and both in marine and in land-based life, be it birds or be it marine animals or be it land animals. So I think protecting that area especially becomes even more important because it's such a vulnerable ecosystem.
Yeah, and actually there's one really, really, really important diving site there called the Darwin's Arch. So,
Right.
like it's named after Darwin. But there's actually this one article I wanted to share. This is actually from May last year. But it talks about the same net. So it talks about these nets. And it's talked about how a study between 2007 and 21 has talked about how 1.41 million of these FADs are drifting through 37% of the world's oceans, stranding in 104 maritime jurisdictions and often polluting sensitive marine habitats. So they're floating through 37% of the world's oceans, like these FADs.
Wow. That
Yeah.
is a really high number. I did not expect that high a number. Um, wow.
Yes, there has to be like stricter ways of disposing and stricter ways of maybe like holding people accountable when they put these FEDs in the ocean.
Yeah, I think fishing and fishing in general across commercial fishing needs, I think, a stricter hand over it. Um, Trolling is a prime example of us going too far. FADs do not seem to be good either. Yeah, we need to really come up with stricter guidelines for fishing. Number one, fishing, and number two, also um, plastics or any kind of plastics that can choke and kill marine life, um, and the ocean. I
Yeah.
think really important. I feel like because the ocean is everything is floating, anything can get into anything else. On land, even if there are plastic pieces, the maximum that might happen is animal might get cut by that sharp piece of plastic, um, or might ingest a piece of plastic. That's the extent of things. But here, you can get tangled. Things can get into your nose. Things can get into all kind of orifices in your body. You can also eat them. Um, but yeah, it's really yeah,
And
it
I
can come
think,
at you from any direction, basically.
yeah, and with the ocean, it can just keep drifting anywhere. So that's the
Exactly.
major problem. Like with land, at least it would stay at one place. Wherever it is
Right.
dumped, it is dumped there. So you kind of have an accountability of source. Like the same way how we were talking about the oil, it's hard to find out in the ocean where
Right.
something is. So these fishermen who throw these nets, they have to be the most accountable. There has to be like some kind of penalty for fishermen who don't remove these nets, because it's crazy how many animals are facing discomfort or how much the reefs are being damaged because of these floating FADs.
Yeah. True. True. Very, very true. I think um yeah, stricter guidelines. The article does mention um some some solutions and people working towards solution. Do you want to quickly go over that a little bit, Meghna?
I will have to come back to that article. Just give me a minute because I have switched to the other article.
Oh, okay. Um,
Yeah.
I think I can quote some quotes here. Um, you know, it says beyond cleaning up FAD garbage, the national park is working with the British charity Galapagos Conservation Trust, Charles Darwin Foundation, Tunacons, and other organizations to identify upstream solutions. What we are trying to look at, this is a quote, what we're trying to look for is a way to find out how to prevent these FADs from entering the reserve, Suarez um, said. I think the upstream solution is the way to go, because, as Meghna was saying, the educating the fisher people and making sure that they take precautions while deploying these FADs, and also like I saw a GPS device, a photo of a GPS device in this article. So these devices or these FADs are being GPS tagged. So it should be really easy to retrieve them, even though it might be a cost to the fishermen. But it should not be too difficult to retrieve them. So I think it's as simple as trying and retrieving those FADs once they're defunct, once they're out of service, and so on and so forth. It is, I think, those kinds of incentives need to be present, and those kinds of stricter enforcements also need to be present, which it seems like the people working towards the solution is already working towards as well.
Yep, and I think in this article it also talks about how Galapagos actually sits at the center of four converging ocean currents, and
Mm,
so the marine biologists are now trying to map the ocean currents so that they can simulate the movements of these floating fish aggregating devices, and they can account for the wind patterns and water temperature and other parameters. So with this information, they would be able to know that when something drifts into this current, where can they find them, and then that might be able, they might be able to save the Galapagos National Park through preventative regulations. So that so this study is actually quite interesting because they know how the currents are working, so that might
mm,
actually help Galapagos in the future. But this is just a preventative solution, and the main solution obviously has to be to hold the fishermen accountable and to make sure that there's no debris or there's no floating devices in the first place.
right. Right. Cool. Let's move on to the next topic then. I'm just seeing what I wanted to do. This is sort of on the fence article, one would say. UP tiger reserves ban mobile phones. Tourists, wildlife lovers unhappy. Authorities at Philippine and Dudwa Tiger Reserve have banned mobile phones following a 2025 Supreme Court directive to minimize human interference in protective areas. Uttar Pradesh's Forest Department um, issued the order aligning with National Tiger Conservation Authority guideline. The court specifically prohibited phone use within tourism zones of tiger reserves' core habitats. The ban aims to regulate tourist behavior after wildlife sightings, tigers, rhinos, leopards, and elephants, as drivers were alerting others via phone, causing crowding and noise. Despite weak signals, connectivity in certain zones disrupted wildlife and violated safari norms. Similar restrictions are already in place at Radati and Corbett reserves, prioritizing a less intrusive environment for animals. What do you think about
Yeah,
this, Meghna?
I mean, oops, you and me have both been on safaris in India, and we know how there are some people who literally come for the safari and they respect the forest, but that's again a minority. Most people come for like one safari, two safaris. They want to come for the tiger. They're really loud. If there's any kind of movement, then they take their phones out, and it is a nuisance for sure. And there has to be better ways, maybe like if the drivers are trying to be in contact with each other, there can be other ways probably. What would you say, these in some of the safari reserves they use that, they have these walkie-talkie kind of systems, not a walkie-talkie, but
Mm,
it's kind of in their safari vehicle as well, and they talk to each other, and they kind of inform each other, or maybe pager systems or something else that can inform of their places, but not through phones. So I actually think it's a good thing because people kind of misuse their phones, and nowadays it's almost become like, you want everything on the phone. You don't want to live a moment anymore, like you want everything to be just captured in your phone.
true, true. And I think what you mentioned, like long range radios and things like that, that is the very commonplace in African safaris, where different vehicles will communicate via the long range radios. That is the first thought that came to my mind as well, when it said, drivers were alerting others via phone. But the cause of this, they say, is why they want drivers not to alert each other via phone, is that they don't want to cause crowding and noise. So if that is the case, then even though radios would cause the same kind of problems, um right.
I think, see, I think the problem also is, oops, that like a lot of these drivers and guides, they have this pressure to show
Mm.
their guests, a tiger or a sighting or whatever. So as soon as there's a sighting, everyone kind of crowds up on one tiger, and we've seen that happening. Like, multiple jeeps would just be waiting, and then sometimes the tigers just take another route because they know that this is like really creating havoc and they can't go through. So like, it's like, how some people talk about when they've gone whale watching and they're like so many boats on one whale. It's kind of the similar thing with the safaris. Like, as soon as you see a tiger, there are like 20 jeeps on one tiger, and everybody's like trying to tell each other that, move a little ahead, move back, let me go here. And there's so much chaos at that point of time that it's quite uncomfortable for the tiger. Like, I mean, if I was a tiger and that's the kind of paparazzi I had to face, I would just be like, let me just go back into the core zone where all these safari vehicles are not allowed.
True, true. Um, Good decision then, would you say?
Yeah, I think definitely. Like, I mean, if you really want to just carry a DSLR, be respectful of the forest. Make sure that whoever you're driving with, that they are also following everything ethically. That you don't push your driver, they don't push you into uncomfortable situations. Because at the end of the day, we're in like a wild animal space. We have the luxury of being in a vehicle, so we're not like, on land, and we don't have to face them. Um, like, what do you say, front on. So we have to have that respect, that we have that association with the forest, that we can be this close to see a tiger. um
Mm.
I mean, imagine if it was the ocean, you just face, like, you're just in the face of another marine mammal or a shark or anything. You don't have that barrier, but at least in on land you have a barrier of a vehicle, and you're still
Mm.
not respecting that barrier.
And I think it's also not having your phones for everyone will mean that you're in the moment, as you were saying at the beginning, and enjoying the all the forest has to offer. Um, I think that's a great thing. Yeah, I think
True.
yeah, overall this is a net positive decision, and hoping other parks will soon follow, because this is an order issued by the Supreme Court, so every park around India has to
Follow it.
apply this rule sometime or the other. So there has already been starts for four national parks mentioned here, but hopefully that will continue and proliferate to other national parks as well. Cool. That's about that. Um,
Yeah, let's go back to the next topic. uh So, Bermuda snail, thought to be extinct, now thrives after a decade's effort. This is an article from The Guardian. The greater Bermuda snail, um, the, the biological name is really tough. It's Poecilozonites bermudensis. Once thought extinct, is now thriving thanks to a decade-long conservation effort. Rediscovered in 2014 in Hamilton, Bermuda, a remnant population sparked an international collaboration led by Chester Zoo and the Bermudian government. Over 100,000 snails were bred in specialized pods at the zoo and released back to the islands. The species face threats from habitat loss, global heating, and invasive predators like wolf snails and flatworms. Successful re-establishment has been confirmed in 6 areas. Conservationists celebrate this achievement as a testament to the vital role zoos play in preventing extinction and the power of collaborative conservation. This rescue marks a significant win for biodiversity. So yeah, this is one of those stories where there was a niche and a void that could be filled back because that creature belonged there, and that is actually quite amazing that they rediscovered the species, and then they made sure that they bred them so that there were 100,000 snails, and then they released them back.
mm, that is so cool. Um,
But I mean, it still doesn't solve the problem of habitat loss or global heating, and the
well,
invasive predators, if they were eating on them earlier, um, I think the predators would still be eating on them now. but because I think they re-established them to like healthy populations, they're still growing like at a decent rate. So that is a conservation success story.
True, 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 true. That is great. And as we keep saying, these discoveries are important because once you know about these species, these discoveries, and studying these species is very, very important because knowing these would better help forest managers and conservationists and the government departments there to better plan for the area and make sure that all the species living there are taken into consideration while formulating a plan and not just one. Um, yeah,
Yeah, and this is a photo of the snail that we're talking about. Um, so this snail, the Bermuda snail, the greater Bermuda snail, this has been brought back from the dead.
that is very cool. I mean, not brought back, but rediscovered, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I mean it was thought to be extinct, right?
Yeah,
And I think this is where it's always tricky with extinction, like because it's not normally visible, we kind of declare them to be extinct, but there might just be a few left, like just a few left at that time.
true. Very, very true. Um, cool. What are we doing next? Let's see, let's see, let's see. There's a story that um, comes from Cambodia. This is a story published in Mongabay. This is headlined um, Cambodia's canal mega project threatens coastal communities and marine life. Cambodia will soon begin construction on the 1.2 billion Funan Techno Teco Canal, a 180-kilometer waterway connecting the Mekong River to the sea, aiming to lower shipping costs and spur economic growth. However, the project is shrouded in uncertainty and fear among residents along the proposed route, who report a lack of government communication regarding potential impacts. Fishermen like May Vuthi in Kep province expresses concerns about losing access to vital fishing grounds as the canal threatens to transform quiet communities into busy ports. Existing pressures from illegal fishing and coastal development already strain Cambodia's marine fisheries, adding to anxieties about the canal's consequences for livelihoods and wildlife. This is the first of a two-part report investigating the canal's potential effects. I think we did a similar story a few episodes back when a dam was being built on a South American river, and there was similar concerns from indigenous communities and local communities. I think it is a fixture of these kinds of articles that the local communities are the ones that are affected the most um, from these kinds of projects, the and they are the ones that are taken into consideration the least by the planning committees or the governments or anyone involved.
Yeah, that is true. And the problem with a lot of these developing countries is that the government doesn't take into account the local population, and they don't want to like involve the locals into their decision making process. As opposed to like South America, which is also developing, but they're trying to like kind of get the locals and the indigenous and the everyone together. But in Southeast Asian economies, this is very common where there'd be projects that are signed, but then the locals would not even know what's happening in that area.
Yeah, Yeah, I think this, and also I think the way that our world has been progressing, and this example has been set by the developed nations, is that development at all costs is the structural framework that we often follow. Developing countries obviously have more pressure to uh, you know project that economic growth and get to that state where they also have that impact on global politics, which is a fair thing to say, or fair thing on the part of the developing countries. um, but that often means that the projects and the decisions are very, for lack of a better term, very cutthroat and very, um, yeah, very, I can't find the right word, but very uh, vehemently negligent of nature and ecosystems and the impact of this project, and even to humans. Like, forget nature, even the impact on the humans and the local communities are being forgot as well.
Yeah, and that is the problem. um like development always comes at a cost, and even if you, like, you can never justify the cost, but at least you have to bring the locals together, because you're going to put all their livelihoods at risk. And these are the locals that actually are the ones that don't really harm the environment. They're the ones that stay with the environment, and they're part of the environment. So it's very important to get the locals into the decision making process, and see how to probably do development, but not at the cost of the environment or the locals.
Yeah, yeah, true. I'm just sharing a map of the Funan Teco Canal plans, and this is the plan where it wants to link the Mekong River to the Gulf of Thailand. So this is the area of Cambodia that is being developed in, and this red line is the Funan Teco Canal project that is being proposed. Now, the impacts of this, as we keep saying, can be can be huge. And here there is another small, you know um, Google sort of satellite imagery showing sort of you know the construction effects on this small island. You can see from 2020 to 2025, this fully green island, how it has changed through the you know development for these you know projects. So this is not only impacting marine life habitats, but they are also restricting the local fishermen's access to the area. And construction means, this image also mentions a good point, that construction means that soil and rocks are just dumped into the sea. The sea is a big dumping ground. Um, you know,
Yeah,
yeah,
true.
unfortunately.
Yeah, and I mean, um and it's very, very, very disheartening to know that Southeast Asian countries, we always have like these negative news when it comes to development. Like, there's a lot of these kind of news where, like, indigenous communities or local communities are not taken into account. There's deforestation, there is infrastructure development, and all at the cost of the environment and the locals.
Correct, correct. I think these kinds of projects, while economically important, need to have uh, a process of including the locals and having consultation with the indigenous communities, not discounting them. Uh, you know, they might have solutions, or they might have insights that the planners never imagined of. I think discounting their point of view is is fruitful for nobody involved.
True, absolutely true. But here's to hoping that maybe there's enough retaliation, there's enough voices, and hopefully the communities are involved in this project. It's easier said than done, but hope is hope.
Yes, that is correct. And if anyone's listening from Cambodia, definitely within the legal limits, try to raise your voices. Try to show your support to these local communities, and at least take their point of view into account. This might be the balance between economic growth and the impact to local communities might be lopsided now, but that once that's balanced, then a solution, I'm sure, can be found where economic growth, local communities, and environmental impacts are all hand in hand. Such solutions have been implemented before and they do exist. It just requires a little bit more patience and a little bit more consultation between all involved parties. That is it.
True. Yep.
Cool.
Okay. Let's go to, let's see what else we can cover today.
Yeah,
Um, we're doing really well with the covering.
true.
Okay, so I
That's
think
great.
I think one thing that you and me both came across that we can cover. So
Hmm.
Rembrandt Line raises $18 million for big cat conservation at a U.S. auction. A small Rembrandt chalk drawing called Young Lion Resting sold for a record-breaking $18 million at a Sotheby's auction in New York City. The artwork, created between 1638 to 1642, surpassed the previous record for a Rembrandt drawing by a significant margin, exceeding the $3.7 million paid for the Boulevard de Rose. The sellers, billionaire philanthropist Thomas Kaplan and John Ayers, are donating the entire proceeds to Panthera, a wildcat conservation charity. Kaplan stated his passion for wildlife conservation exceeds even his love for Rembrandt, hoping the sale will attract further support for the cause. Ayers emphasized the drawing's ability to now directly aid the protection of lions in the wild.
Mhm.
I mean, billionaires obviously do a lot of things that are anti-environment, but it's nice to see when they really, really want to support, conservation initiatives. That they bought a painting and they donated that entire proceed to Panthera, which is, doing wildcat conservation work.
Right, right. Very characteristic for a billionaire, but you know regardless, this is good. I
Let me
think,
just share the image of the painting that's gone for $18 million. That is the painting. It was a
yeah.
chalk artwork and it's from the 1600s. And that's a
Mm.
beautiful like painting for that time with whatever resources they probably had, you know.
I mean, that is the beginning of the Renaissance. So,
Yeah.
it is. I mean, that was the time art and culture was at its peak. So Rembrandt is a Dutch painter, very very famous Dutch painter, and he has got some beautiful artworks otherwise as well. But this apparently was in private collection. Um, and yeah, great to see the proceeds from the sale going to a good cause. Big cat conservation, definitely a worthy cause there.
Yeah, and the fact that it's $18 million,
Mm,
that's a huge, huge amount. I mean, that would really, really like fuel the conservation for a long time. And the fact that the philanthropist is also talking about, for other billionaires to step up and donate similar amounts for conservation. That itself is, I think, a little heartwarming to know that you do what you have to do on your business end, but also you care about the environment, so you are ready to pump in that much money into conservation efforts as well.
Mm. I wonder, again, being the devil's advocate here, I wonder if this is a
Tax
way,
evasion? Yeah, could be.
yeah, could be a tax evasion, could be, could be also something like he's atoning for a guilt that is he has in his mind, or along, or something along those lines. Either, a guilt, you know, he's atoning for something, or he's, you know, being penalized for some environmental damage that his work has caused. Again,
But I think this is the sad part about being like a billionaire. If they do something right, we're like, oh, there has to be some kind of motive behind it. Like we just don't see the good for
I
the
mean,
good.
not without reason though, Meghna.
True,
Nine
true. There
times out
are
of 10, there is a motive behind it.
true, but I mean, for this one, we don't know. But I would assume that at least it's done because he really wanted to do it. Tax evasion or tax saving would obviously be really high because when you donate, it's tax free. But
Mm.
and you can write it off from other taxes. But still, like it's like a really big gesture. I mean, like to give away $18 million is huge.
Right. No, no. I'm not definitely discounting the the size or the worth of the donation, but definitely being a little bit of a skeptic. And I think I would expect someone like Guardian to pick up on anything, if anything nefarious was going on. I would expect them to pick up on that as well, since there has been no reporting in this area. I choose to believe for now, until proven otherwise, that this was done for selfless reasons and really for the conservation of big cats and from his love of big cats,
But I mean, I
as
think
well.
Thomas Kaplan is known as a philanthropist, so I think he is known to be doing these kind of things.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Great piece of news from the US for a change.
Yep. So yeah, I think that's a great news to kind of draw an end to our show today.
Yeah.
Um, and as usual we obviously have a message, like I mean, talking about our headline topic, like what do you think, like what are the ways that economies can actually cut down, or what ways do you think that we can actually at an individual level cut down so that we can save the environment for our future generations, so that we
Mm.
have a planet to live on and 2100 is not our cutoff date.
Right. Right. That's a question to ponder on, I guess. But as always, definitely do subscribe to a channel and follow us on all the different platforms. We're, our accounts are there live on all the different platforms: Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok, Twitch, and whatever you can imagine. We go live all on all platforms simultaneously. So wherever you subscribe to us or follow us, you'd be able to watch us from there every Sunday. Um, Also, if you're listening to a recorded version of this podcast on your favorite podcasting app, do consider leaving us a review and share this with a friend that might share our views and your views. Or if they don't share your views, just share this with them to give them another perspective. Even if they don't agree, they just have another perspective in their arsenal. And they are exposed to that, because a lot of people, as we talk about, are often not exposed to these issues, and they're often not aware of these issues in the first place because they're so busy and so like in survival mode in the day-to-day lives. So share this around. That really helps spread the message, and that is our goal with this podcast as well. But other than that, that's it for today, and we will see you next Sunday. Same time, same channel. Have a good one, guys.
Bye bye.